Hello student. So in last class we saw cellular respiration. It was a three-step process. First step was glycolysis, second Krebs cycle or TCA cycle. TCA meaning tricarboxylic acid cycle, and the third was electron transport chain. The glucose was the main substrate for respiration, where it leads to oxidizing of glucose, making it 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 6 molecules of water, and 36 to 38 ATP. Now, what is ATP? ATP is adenosine triphosphate. It is made up of 3 phosphate group, 1 pentose sugar, and 1 nitrogenous compound, that is adenine. How does ATP gives energy? Now ATP gives energy by breaking down of phosphate bond. Okay, so this ATP changes into ADP, triphosphate into diphosphate. So this inorganic phosphate is broken down from the ATP and ADP is generated. While breaking down of the phosphate group, it liberates energy. So this is how ATP generates energy, and hence it is called as energy currency of the cell. Few days back we saw the carbohydrates getting oxidized and we get ATP in the return. Now what if there are some exceptional condition, like we go on fasting or we don't have any other carbohydrate food to eat? Okay, so then your lipid or fats and protein comes as savior, and hence these produce energy for us in that condition. First, the fats, which is also known as lipid, they are converted into fatty acids, and proteins are converted into amino acids. These fatty acids or amino acids are then converted into directly acetyl coenzyme A, which I told you it happens during the preparatory phase of Krebs cycle. So fatty acid and amino acids get directly into Krebs cycle. It just skips the glycolysis, the first step. It skip and directly goes to the Krebs cycle. So from there, whatever amount of ATP is generated, that is the net amount of energy that after the oxidation of fats and protein we used to get. So remember student, in oxidation of glucose, it is a 3-step: glycolysis, Krebs cycle and TCA. But in case of fatty acids and amino acid, or you can say in fats and protein, it has just 2 steps of oxidation, that is Krebs cycle and TCA cycle. So now you can see from here, this flow chart is given in your book on page number 15. So lipids is converted into fatty acids and it directly forms acetyl coenzyme A, which enters the Krebs cycle, giving rise to carbon dioxide, water and energy. Same thing happens with the protein too. It converted into amino acid and then acetyl coenzyme A, and the same product are formed. Right? Now, you all like sports, isn't it? Well, when I was little younger, I liked it too. It's such a adrenaline rush to see any race and cheering for our favorite participant. Students, you must have observed the racer after finishing the race tends to breathe very fast or feels exhausted. That because of the oxygen supply in their body becomes limited, or it may be absent too. That is the case of anaerobic condition. So you must have heard this word anaerobic. That means where there is limited or absence of oxygen, and the opposite of that is aerobic, where there is sufficient amount of oxygen. Now I am going to tell you about the anaerobic respiration. What will happen if our body or any organism is surviving without oxygen? So In such cases, your body is in demand of energy, but your ATP cannot help much as there is just limited supply of ATP in your body and it's get exhausted so fast. So then, how do we produce energy in that condition? Students, you need to understand where we started. Okay, our cell cannot do Krebs cycle and etc because it requires oxygen, and our cell don't have oxygen in that case. So what happens then? The glycolysis still goes on, because if you remember, I told you glycolysis still don't require oxygen. So glycolysis, the end product was pyruvic acid or pyruvate. So that starts to get built up. The amount of pyruvic acid increases, but it cannot enter the Krebs cycle because for doing it you require oxygen. So your cell starts to convert this additional pyruvic or pyruvic acid into lactic acid, okay, and also carbon dioxide. But in doing so, very less amount of ATPs are generated. In normal case, there was around 36 to 38 ATP generated because we have 3 steps to do. But in this case, in anaerobic condition, this glycolysis step is the only process that happens which don't require oxygen, and hence that just give limited amount of ATP, rather just 2 ATP, and the end product is lactic acid but not acetyl coenzyme A. Now this process is known as fermentation. It produces carbon dioxide, lactic acid and less ATP than the normal procedure, that is aerobic respiration. It is also observed in some higher plants and animals and aerobic microorganisms. They also perform anaerobic respiration instead of aerobic respiration if there is depletion in oxygen level in the surrounding. The seed which has to be generated if the soil is submerged in under the water, so that seed cannot take much of oxygen, so in that case it germinate in absence of oxygen and hence it performs the anaerobic respiration. Now energy production in microorganism through anaerobic respiration, so it is similar to us. The only process that happens is glycolysis and fermentation. So these two steps only completes the process in releasing the ATP molecules or energy, but there is incomplete oxidation of the glucose, and because of that there is less amount of energy released. The pyruvic acid or pyruvate, which is produced through glycolysis, is converted into other organic or alcohol substances with the help of some enzyme in this process. So in your book also it is given in a flowchart form. In the center, if you see, there is a microorganism which undergo anaerobic respiration, and the process is known as fermentation, and there it releases different kinds of product, inorganic product like vinegar, vitamins. Also the yeast, when you do fermentation in idli and dosa, so that also produces less quantity of energy and it releases alcohol and carbon dioxide. Similarly, your muscle cell erythrocyte, some higher plants also perform anaerobic condition in the condition where there is very less or absence of oxygen, so the product forms are different from the normal aerobic respiration. Now, apart from glucose, we also have different other nutrition that gives energy. Okay, these are the food components like protein, fats, vitamins, etc. Now, proteins are the macromolecules, macro meaning big molecules which are formed by bonding many amino acid. And I would like to tell you that 1 gram of protein gives you 4 kilocalorie of energy. It's the same thing as of 1 gram of glucose. Now, after the digestion of protein, what we get is amino acid. These amino acids are absorbed in our body and transported to the organs and the cell. From here, these amino acids are taken to form very important proteins which is required for every cells and organs. You can see here the amino acids which are digested, they are taken to form our skin, melanin and keratin pigment in bones, oesin in cells, various proteins of cell membrane, various enzymes, pancreas, various hormones like insulin and trypsin, pituitary gland, various hormones are made there. In muscles also there are various proteins like actin and myosin, flexible proteins are made, and in blood, of course, hemoglobin and antibodies are very important component of our blood. These amino acids are not stored in our body. The excess, like glucose, if excess is there, so it is stored in our muscles and liver in the form of glycogen. But the amino acids or the protein that we have in our food, that are not stored. So they just flushed out or eliminated out from our body, and some protein are also converted into glucose in our body, and that process is known as gluconeogenesis. Gluconeogenesis is the process in which the proteins or the amino acids are converted into glucose. In plant, there is one enzyme known as rubisco, which is present in the plant chloroplast, and it is the most abundant protein found in nature. Okay, after protein, very important source of energy is also fat during hunger and fasting. Now, what is this fat or lipid is made up of? It is nothing but it is made up of long chain of fatty acids and alcohol. So after breaking off lipids, fats, or also it is known as triglycerides. So if you break them, what you will get is fatty acids and alcohol. These fatty acids are absorbed and distributed everywhere within our body. What is the role of the fatty acid in our body? Student, these are the molecules which is responsible for making our cell membrane or plasma membrane. Our plasma membrane is made up of protein and fats. So fatty acids are very much required for making up the cell plasma membrane. Beside that, it is also used for producing the hormones like progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, etc. And the covering around the axon nerve cell. If you remember the structure of axon in 9th standard, you all have studied. So the covering around the axon is made up of these fats or fatty acids, and you will get 9 kilocalorie of energy if it is getting per gram of lipid get digested. So the amount of energy is more here than you compare with glucose and protein, and the excess of lipids are stored in adipose connective tissue in the body. Okay, now there are very important role of vitamins in our body also. There are different kinds of vitamin A, B, C, D, E, K. Okay, where A, D, E, K are fat soluble and B and C are water soluble. That is why the fruits and some vegetables are advised to wash them before cutting. So because after cutting, if you wash them, the water soluble vitamin B and C will just waste away. Also, you must have remember FADH2 and NADH2 during the ETC and Krebs cycle. Okay, so the vitamin B2, which is chemical name is riboflavin, and vitamin B5 nicotinamide is responsible for making or for production of these FADH2 and NADH2. So vitamin also in our food is very important. Now our body is made up of 65 to 70% of water. Our cell by weight, it is 70% water it has. Your plasma membrane 90% of water. So functioning of cell and thereby whole body disturbs even when a little amount of water is lost in the body. You must have seen some in cholera or some loose motion, or any patient or any of your family member, if they have such things where they loses the water from the body, they are given the sugar salt water solution or ORS, right? So that to maintain the water balance in their body. We tend to ignore fiber in our body, in our food, but fiber is very much important because it helps in digestion and egestion of food from our body. It doesn't get digested, but it helps in these things. So that is why we should always have little fiber in our body in the terms of like some green leafy vegetables, salads, fruits, and some cereals. Now we have finished the aerobic anaerobic respiration and energy production through the protein and fats. We also saw why do we require these kinds of nutrition in our body, because anyway we are having energy because of glucose. So but why protein and fats are required, why vitamins are required, now you have come to know exactly. So next we will see the cell division, that is mitosis and meiosis.